All right, I'm here with Father Christopher Cantrell, and we're talking about one of his favorite subjects, and now one of my favorite subjects, the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage. I just finished it a month ago, cycling, a little bit different, and it was a great experience. At the time, I thought, I'm never going to do this again. This is too hard, and now I want to go back. I want to do it again. So, how many times have you done it?
Well, I've walked four different times. It
Four times.
depends on how you count it. But I have four Compostelas.
Okay, and which routes have you taken?
I walked the French route in 2011, which is from Saint Jean Pied de Port on the French border. That's the long one.
Yeah.
So I did that in 2011. In 2013,
And how many days? How many days did that one take?
Took me 31 days of walking.
Wow. How much weight did you lose?
About 18 pounds.
Wow. In a month.
In a month. And ate like a horse.
Yeah, I bet you did. Yeah, I ate a ton while I was on the Camino. Okay, so you done the Camino Francais. What else?
So I did the Camino Frances in 2011. In 2013, I went to Oviedo and walked the Camino Primativo, which was the route that King Alfonso II walked.
Yes.
When he first heard the news that the remains of James had been found.
Yep.
And then in 2015, trying to remember how I did this. In 2015, I went back on the Frances. I took a train to just outside of a place called Orbigo. Mm-hmm. I started in Astorga.
Okay. Yeah.
And I walked from Astorga on into Santiago, which is more than the 100 kilometers, but not quite 200.
Right. That's from what I understand. A lot of people who want to do the shortened version, they go into that part of the Camino. That way they can get their 100 kilometers, right?
Yeah. Well, it's Sarria on that route is the 100-kilometer mark.
Okay.
And I was several days before Sarria.
Okay.
I was just trying to work with the time I've had. I've had 2-week vacation period, so I've gone back for that. And then the last fall, in September, I actually did two different Caminos. I did what's called the Camino Lebaniego, which does not go to Compostela. It goes to a monastery of Santo Toribio, where the largest extant fragment of the true cross is kept. So that's up on the Galician coast, on the northern edge. It actually intersects the northern Camino route to Santiago. And that was about a week's walk up into the mountains. But then I went from there by train to Ferrol. And Ferrol is in the upper corner of Galicia, and the walking route from Ferrol to Compostela is called the Camino Inglés. Mm-hmm. It's the English.
That's from the port, right?
It's from the port of Ferrol.
Okay. So if
that's
you
where
do
English pilgrims would come by ship.
The English, yeah. So Ferrol is the name of that port.
Yes.
Okay.
There's actually two ports. There's Ferrol, there's A Coruña. And either one of those two ports were embarkation points for walking from the coast.
Yeah.
But to get 100 kilometers in, you have to start in Ferrol.
So does anyone actually charter a boat or sail? It'd be kind of fun to sail from England to Ferrol and then walk it.
A few years ago, there were a group of Irish pilgrims that sailed from Ireland.
Ah.
I'm not sure where they ended up on the coast. They may have gone to Finisterre, right. But I think but the plan was to do a medieval pilgrimage that way, sail from Ireland.
Yeah.
And pick up and walk the rest of the way.
So how did you get into this? I mean, when I was there, I heard that in 1977 there were I'm kind of guessing here, but it was 13 pilgrims that came the whole year. So, I mean, it was dead. The invention of the automobile and trains, the idea of a walking pilgrimage in the 1900s was dead. And then beginning in the 80s, this renaissance happened in the Camino. Now there's hundreds of thousands that are going every year, and they expect in the next pilgrimage year to break 1 million, right? Oh,
yep.
Yeah. You still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's a little choppy.
All right. So how did you hear about it and get interested in doing the first one? You bit off the big one, 31 day. What what led you to make that kind of a commitment? Because that's a financial commitment, a time commitment, a family commitment. It's a big deal.
I had heard about the Camino vaguely way back when I was in college through the Cursillo movement. Because there's a whole lot of nomenclature used by the Cursillistas that comes from the Camino.
Oh, interesting.
But I just heard it referenced kind of abstractly that way. But what really got my attention was when Lee Nelson walked the Camino. Right after he graduated from Nashotah House, he had a month off before he was supposed to take up duties, and the next thing I know, he announced he was going to Spain to walk this pilgrimage route, and he was going to blog about it.
Yeah, I remember that. That would have been what, 2005, I think.
Yep,
yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
And I watched him do it, and read his blog and thought, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And it kind of got stuck in my head as something to put on the bucket list. Mm-hmm. Somewhere way off in the future, I would, if I got around to it, would do it. And then in 2010, late in 2010, I had a conversation with my bishop, Bishop Eicher, and he was telling me about somebody else who had a sabbatical. And I said, "Oh, a sabbatical, that'd be a great thing, but I could never afford to do one of those." And he said, "Well, you ought to. What would you need?" And in fact, he said, "If your parish will agree to cover for you while you're gone, I'll give you a little grant and you could do something."
Awesome.
And what immediately leapt to mind when that came about was, hey, this is time enough. I could go do the Camino. Mm. And so kind of the planets aligned. I could get coverage. The parish was willing for me to take the time off to do it. Miraculously, my wife said, okay. It was certainly a big commitment of time. It was a long stretch of time away from home. But thankfully, my kids were last ones in high school at that time. So, it was a whole collision of things came together and said, let's go do it.
And you were by yourself. You just flew by yourself.
So I went over to, as it turns out, I had a parishioner who had a cousin who was a doctor in Barcelona. And she said, if you're going to Spain, you got to go see my cousin Domingo. Go see cousin Domingo. So we worked it out. She wouldn't take no for an answer. And so Karen, my wife, and I went over to Barcelona for a week of vacation just to be together. And then she got on a plane, came back home, and I got on the train and went up to Pamplona and then by bus over to Saint Jean.
Okay.
So that I could walk. And I walked in September into October in 2011.
Wow. So tell us, maybe before I want to hear some of your experiences, especially in the 31 day. But for those that are new to this, what is the Camino Santiago? I've talked about it in other videos, but maybe people haven't seen those. What is it?
It is a pilgrimage. A visit to the remains of the Apostle James, believed to be in the crypt in the bottom of the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, northwestern Spain. There are all sorts of wonderful tales about how that came to be. Long and the short of it is that his disciples were said to have brought his remains back from the Middle East, from Jerusalem, where he was killed by Herod. And he was laid to rest in that part of the world where he had done his mission work. His body was lost for a number of centuries and then refound. And the circumstances around the finding of his body were miraculous. The shepherd was led by the light of a star. And so that's the reason for the name Compostela is from the field of the star.
Compostela, from Field of the Star.
So the bishop was summoned when the bones were found. The bishop read the inscriptions at the site and said, yes, indeed, we think this is the bones of the apostle, the companion of our Lord, one of his inner circle, one of the sons of thunder.
Yeah.
And he in turn sent word to Oviedo, to King Alfonso, something incredible has happened here. You need to come check this out. And King Alfonso the Chaste, set out to go see the bones.
The first pilgrim.
He's the first pilgrim, number one, Primativo.
Yeah. And that's why that route, which you've done, is the Primativo.
And so that's the origin of the pilgrimage as best I know it. I was watching something not too long ago that described the three great medieval pilgrimage sites were all connected with this inner circle of our Lord. Peter at Rome, James in Santiago, and John in the Middle East, in Jerusalem.
Yeah, right.
So
the Transfiguration witnesses.
Absolutely, makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So in the Middle Ages, these were the great destinations, and certainly any self-respecting Christian would consider making the journey once in their life. Obviously, at the time of the Crusades, travel to the Middle East may have been very dangerous and might have been daunting. So the prospect of walking to Spain might have been a better option, given everything that might have been involved. There was still the problem of the Muslim occupation of the Spanish Peninsula, but the Templar orders, the companion orders, the Knights Templars, the Knights Hospitallers, Knights of St. John, all looked out for pilgrims on the pilgrim roads, and they had custody of the routes in Spain during the time of its heyday. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something I didn't know until I actually got there, was seeing all the evidence of the Knight orders along the Camino. That's a big part, that the Knights Hospitallers and the Templars were there. And it was news to me. I always thought of them as in the Crusades and in the Middle East and those routes. So it was interesting to see that whole system there across the north of Spain. The other thing that I knew in the back of my mind, but didn't really become concrete till I got there, was realizing this 700 plus year problem of the Muslims being there in 711 till 1492.
Yeah.
And all the wars, all the battles, and like you think about, well, why was the Spanish king so far north, like way up there? Well, they've been driven back, you know. The Muslims had the south, and so the Catholic, the Christians, the aristocrats, the king, they were in the north, and they were holding out, and they were keeping the tradition alive. And you can understand why maybe, you know, the relics were lost, you know, or how this whole thing happened. But once those bones are found, it's almost like a rallying moment for the Christians in the north, because they have an apostle. And I even read that some of the Muslims were afraid that this would give them power in battle.
Precisely. The skeptics of the Camino want to say that it was all a PR stunt in order to rally the Christian cause in the north of Spain to help push the Muslims back. Yeah. And there are further legends of St. James, one appearing at the Battle of Clavijo, in leading the charge and
the Moor Slayer, yes.
Matamoros, and so on the town hall directly across the square from the entrance to the cathedral, is a statue of Santiago Matamoros on top of the town hall. You can't miss it if you stand on the front porch.
Yep.
So there's those two strains of the Santiago legend that's very strong in Spain and very much connected to their national identity. Yep. Santiago the Pilgrim and Santiago the Slayer of the Moors.
Yeah.
If you walk the French way, you get a real sense of the topography as you're walking from east to west, almost the whole way until about to Leon or just beyond Leon. The mountains are off to your right. Yeah. And beyond the mountains, there was a little strip of land and then the ocean.
Yeah.
You know, but the Muslims never took those mountains.
Yeah.
They got to that wall, and that wall stopped it. So in one sense, even the land protected the Christian faith in Spain.
Yeah.
And as you go west from Leon, you hit the mountains again. So Galicia is walled off as well.
Let me tell you,
so it's all kind of protected land. You rode your bike over those.
I mean, I tell you, I got there, and we did it cycling. My dad's a big cyclist, and I've been training and riding 2 times a week, 3 times a week here in Texas, flat, just flat riding. And I got there, and there was a lot of older people, a couple of women in their 60s, I think a man in his 70s. I thought, oh, this is going to be no problem. I'm going to be able to smoke all these people. Well, the first morning, we started in Leon, and that morning we're getting fitted on our bicycles. All these older people have e-bikes, which are electric. They don't require extra pedaling, right? And I was like, uh-oh. Yeah, that's a bad sign for me because I'm on a normal bike. And I'll tell you, once we got the second and third day after Leon, we started getting into those Galician mountains, and it was killer. The Iron Cross?
Yeah.
I got to the top of that ascent and literally, with my feet clipped into the bike, just fell over on the ground, bruised my knee because I was so exhausted. I was like, I was like drunk. I was so thirsty for oxygen and water and everything. It's just, it's remarkable. I thought to myself, this is like Colorado, but everything is green and mossy.
Yeah. And you're not as high as Colorado either.
No, but it's just green. There's moss growing here in Texas. It's on the north side of the tree. There, it's 360 degrees all the way around the tree is green.
Yep. And
we got rained on. And it's beautiful country, but it is like entering into a fortress, and you got to fight your way through. So I could see. I mean, it would be hard to carry armies through that area and to sustain them.
Oh yeah. Now the Muslims did sack Santiago at one point. Mm-hmm. And they stole the bells from the cathedral, mm-hmm. and took them back down south. The story was that the bishop at the time, when the sack of Santiago was taking place, he went down and sat on the tomb.
The bishop.
And the bishop did. And when the Muslim conqueror, I think it was Al-Mansur, I think is his name, saw the piety of the bishop and was in some terror of what he might be disturbing, said, "Leave the tomb alone."
Interesting.
So the tomb was spared in that conflict.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. But they took the bells. They have to have some token. Some token. Another thing that I didn't know was that when King Alfonso II found it, that the Spanish kings who had been, of course, working with the Franks, that Charlemagne was interested in the finding of St. James and kind of endorsed it. And that also, I think, may have started a lot of, pilgrimage from the West. So I didn't know that already in, French history, there was an early connection with the site of the shrine.
Oh, very definitely. And there was a tremendous amount of commerce all along the Camino route tied in with France. And so over and over and over, there's 3 or 4 places along the French route called Villa Franca,
mm-hmm. Yep.
the town of the Franks.
Yep.
And there were recruiting efforts made to get Frankish Christians to come and live in Spain and help populate the area and help build it back up. So there's a long, deep connection there.
Yeah.
I know also that other Camino I was telling you about where the cross is at Santo Toribio, the abbot of that monastery was in contact with some of Charlemagne's court.
Okay, is that how he got the cross?
And well, that was brought over by Toribio, who was the bishop of Astorga.
Oh, okay.
He was bishop of Astorga until the Muslims started closing in on Astorga, and he had already died. But they moved the relic of the cross and his bones from Astorga up into Cantabria, yes. Up where they are now, up in the mountains. Okay, so all of these things are intertwined. I mean, they're all tied in with each other.
What do you think about the legend of Our Lady of Pilar Pilar, and
Yes.
in the chronology of James. The way that I understand it is that James was in Spain. He's evangelizing. The apparition happens. This would have been while Our Lady's still alive.
Yes.
So she's either in Jerusalem or Ephesus. So it's the first Marian apparition. It's pre-Dormition Assumption. And it seems in the legend he didn't have a lot of success in his apostolic ministry, but that's the incident that brings him back to Jerusalem. Is that how you understand it?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
My understanding was that she appeared, Our Lady appeared to James and told him not to be discouraged.
Right.
That if he would build a church and place her image in it,
Yes.
she would, and the image that he receives is her on the pillar.
Yes. Our Lady
and
of Pilar.
And he's told that if he will do that, that he needs to come home.
Yes.
That he's needed back at home. And so he and at least two of his disciples, his Spanish converts,
go.
Which may be his entire flock. I don't know how many yet.
Yeah.
But they make the journey back to Jerusalem.
Right. Which, when you think of it, that reverse pilgrimage, like to come home, ultimately is to come home to heaven, like, which is the whole point of pilgrimage, is this. It's a transcendental, it transcends walking on earth. It's ultimately the pilgrimage to the heart of Christ, right? And
sure. James
is that first martyr, first apostolic martyr, pardon me. But one of the things that kind of puzzled me about that story, just trying to put together all the pieces, is, okay, so Our Lady of Pilar is not near Galicia. It's not near where the final resting place of the bones are.
No, that's Zaragoza.
It's like, it's opposite.
It's way over there on the other side.
Yeah. So
sure.
I was just wondering, were his original disciples, were they from Galicia? And that's why they brought him to Galicia? Like, why wouldn't they? It seems that they would bring him to Saragossa if that's where his original community was. I don't know. I'm just kind of confused on the geography and trying to put the story together. Or did the disciples get lost in a storm and they got set out to Galicia? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, the legend is that the boat was carried through the Pillars of Hercules, through the Gibraltar Strait.
Yeah.
And so if you're out on the Atlantic side, it would make sense to go on up to Galicia.
Right.
Could have just as easily been somewhere in Portugal along the way.
Sure.
But in fact, they went all the way on up. And you've recounted the story about the night that was he and his horse fell in the water when the ship came in, and he came out of the water covered in shells and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't have a good explanation for that.
We don't know. And do you know the name of the two disciples?
One is Athanasius.
Yes, one is Athanasius. I think the other
Athanasio and...
Is it Theodoros?
That sounds right.
Someone told me. I remember thinking, oh, Athanasius, that's kind of cool. You got an Athanasius early in the game here. Not Athanasius.
Well, yes, he's the undying one and the gift of God.
Yeah.
So
that's what they mean in Greek. So, and maybe those were their baptismal names. I don't know, but
I'm sure they would have been baptismal names.
Yeah. Otherwise, they were some, pre-Latinate Iberian names of some sort.
Yeah.
But
this is all Roman. This is all thoroughly Roman territory by then.
Yes.
And they're good Roman, and they're good Roman roads, and they're good. There's every reason to think that it would be a relatively easy thing of the time to make the trip there. Yeah. It just takes time.
I don't know if you saw the video I put out a few weeks ago where I talk about in the Great Commission of Christ, he tells the apostles to go and share the gospel in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and unto the end of the world. And the Romans knew what the end. They had a place called the end of the world. It's Finis Terrae, which is Latin for end of the earth, end of the world. And so it's fitting that if Jesus literally said to the ends of the world, to the Jewish and the Roman mind, they didn't know about North America, South America, in their mind, to fulfill the commandment of Jesus Christ in the Great Commission, somebody among the 12 had to go to Spain.
Yeah.
Somebody had to do it. And that's James. So you can see it in Romans too, that Paul sees a prophetic fulfillment in the role of Spain being evangelized. It needs to be done. And some people have said, well, and if Paul's saying that he wants to go to Spain, that proves that James didn't go there. I don't really think that's a good argument. It might be that James went there and he got martyred, and so there's still work to be done in Spain. And
sure.
Paul wants that privilege. He wants to be.
Yeah, I don't think the two are exclusive.
No, I think Paul just wants to catch the rebound, and he can say, I'm the one that got it all the way to Finis Terrae, to the end of the earth.
There's a whole other tradition that one of Paul's disciples went to Britain.
Yeah.
Aristobulus was supposed to have gone to Britain. So, again, they were fanning out.
Yeah.
Some people
think, wow, how would someone from Jerusalem go to Britain or Spain? All these trade routes had been happening 1000 BC. We have Punic, Phoenician evidence hundreds of years before Christ in all of these regions.
I've walked those roads.
Yeah, they're sailing.
I've walked those roads.
Yeah, it's not
the Romans were good at building roads, and they're still there.
Yeah,
and you can still walk on them. Yeah. And that's part of the French route is along the Roman roads,
right?
Especially out on the Meseta. The Romans. This was part of the empire. This was civilized territory.
Yeah.
You could go from one end of the empire to the other in relative safety. Yeah, it's entirely believable, and people did it.
Yeah, and that's Paul says that Christ came in the fullness of time. Part of that has to do with the language of Greek. Part of it has to do with the Roman Empire and the Pax Romana. Part of it has to do with the roads and the sea routes.
Certainly.
The trade routes, because the entire Mediterranean was connected by sea routes, even outside up into Norway, Denmark, Finland, all of that. The Vikings are all the way down into Africa. I mean, everybody is mixing together, and they've even found. I saw recently they found in a Viking settlement some Muslim artifact that they must have traded someplace in the Middle East, somewhere along the way, but it made its way up to Sweden, and.
Oh, sure.
And there it is. So all of these routes are connected. So a lot of people think, oh, well, how would a Jewish man, James, get to Spain? Easy. It's not.
You start walking.
Yeah, I know.
You just start walking.
Right.
They're developing the pilgrimage, the walking route between Jerusalem and the rest of Europe.
Yeah.
Even now, it's called the Jerusalem Way. There are folks who would love to see enough if peace would ever come to Syria.
Right.
That's the connection right
there.
So
go to Jerusalem and actually do the whole land walk all the way to Santiago. That'd be incredible.
Yeah. There's a guy who's working on developing the infrastructure, certainly laying down the routes.
Mm-hmm.
But it was done. It was done in the times of pilgrimage.
Yeah.
It was done before the Crusades.
Yeah.
It was a common thing. I mean, that was one of the reasons behind the Crusades.
Right.
Was because the pilgrims were being harassed,
yes.
where they had not been bothered beforehand.
Right.
So all that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're getting way afar.
No, it's great. I mean, you can watch a lot of videos and get kind of the 30,000 wide lens view of this, but I think we're getting into some of the particulars. Now, one of the things I want to ask you, I've asked you before, but along the Camino, I was with a group of people who were not particularly religious. They were there mainly for a fun fitness. These were cyclists.
Yeah.
And they're into, making sure you get to the next cappuccino. I like that too. It's great, or café con leche rather. But all along the way is kind of like nudging, like, is James really on? Like, are we really going to James, or is this something else? Is this James or empty? Or so? What do you think? You think James is really there?
I do.
Yeah, I do too.
I do, and if somebody were to open up the box and do some kind of DNA testing and come up with something different, that wouldn't change my perspective on it.
So you'd still walk it?
The Camino routes are absolutely imbued, infused, shot through with its own kind of spiritual
Faith.
energy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there is no doubt that it finds its locus in the apostle of our Lord.
Yeah.
People who start out walking in France saying, I'm doing this for fun, I'm doing this because I got a month off, or I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Nobody comes away from this unchanged.
Yeah.
Some of them may get to the end of the walk and not be able to say, well, I'm a deeper Christian than I was when I started out. But there is no doubt that they've been affected by this.
Yeah.
And the whole deep tradition all along the way of hospitality, of all of this works on you.
Yeah.
You can't miss it. And it's stunning to people who've never thought about these things before. I kept running into Jews.
We had a Jewish guy on our trip.
When I walked the Camino Frances, there were probably five or six different Jewish folk along the way. We ended up the little group, the family that I was in for the last 2 weeks. There was a young woman named Shani, who's a constitutional lawyer in Israel, and she's a secular Jew. She's not terribly observant, but I think she is more so now. But we teased her unmercilessly about it. I said, "Oh, you come to see the bones of your countrymen," and we laughed and joked. And after several days, we discovered that she was going to Mass with us. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And she kept being drawn to church, and wherever possible. And it was at that time very possible along the way. A lot of little towns near the refuge, the church would have a Mass in the evening for pilgrims.
Yes, very common.
And so almost, usually around 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock in the evening was kind of the pilgrim Mass time, and so you go to Mass and then go to dinner afterwards.
Yep.
And then go back and crash to get up and walk the next morning. But I remember several times having Shawnee just decide she's going to fall in with us and go to Mass.
Yeah, it's great. We had a Jewish gentleman on our trip, and he and I were taking a break and having a coffee, and he said, "Yeah, actually, I'm Jewish." And I was like, "Oh, it's okay." And I was like, "Santiago's Jewish." He's like, "What?" I was like,
exactly.
Where we're going, Santiago, St. James, he's Jewish. He's like, "No." What? He's like, "What?" Like, "Yeah, he's Jewish." He's like, "Well, how is that?" And I said, because he's like thinking Catholic saint, and I was like, "Well, he's one of the 12 apostles of Jesus. Jesus was Jewish. All 12 apostles were Jewish. That means Santiago, the guy we're going towards, is Jewish." And he's like, I kind of like that.
Yeah. He's a good Galilean boy.
Yeah, exactly. So
no, I do. But because I saw that over and over and over again. People end up, especially doing the long walk, because the center section of the Camino Frances is about a week of walking on the flat. I mean, the central plains of the northern part of Spain cause you to focus inwardly. The story is that the first week or so, if you walk out of France, you got to tackle the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
So it's immediately a physical challenge to get up and over the mountains and over the hills. But by the time you've been into it for about a week, you get out on the open plains, and it's flat. And the Romans built dead straight roads. I mean, they just say point A to point B is the shortest route. Take it. Walking for several hours with nothing but sky over you, you've got time to think. And introspection happens whether you want it to or not.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you just have to talk. But I watched folks kind of spread out. People tended to walk kind of by themselves. The groups got looser out on the Meseta, and I think, all of the commentators on it talk about that's the time to you find yourself sorting out things. And if you're getting honest about yourself and about your life and about your place in the universe, God's got a chance to get a hold of you.
Yeah. Yeah. What about as you get past Leon and it starts to get bumpy again?
Sure, but you've been through
right.
this other thing, and you're ready for that.
Okay, gotcha.
It really is amazing how that worked out,
mm-hmm.
just in terms of the topography of the route. Now the whole business of walking from the French border is artificial,
right?
Because I mean the medieval pilgrim would go from home.
Yeah, and he would go back home. He'd do it
exactly.
twice. Once,
it's not just a one-way walk and jump on a plane and go home.
Right.
Yeah, if you get there and then you got to turn around and go back.
Yeah.
Reverse pilgrims, they call them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I ran into a guy in San Juan de Ortega sitting one morning. I came off of this mountain, and you walk past this monastery, and it was the first place that day to get coffee. And the Camino runs on café con leche.
It does, yeah.
So I stopped to get a coffee, and here was this guy sitting at a table outside of this bar, kind of a big muscular guy, wearing shorts and big hiking boots, and on the side of his calf, he had a big cross of St. James, like on your shell around your neck, and a shell, and then underneath it. It said 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. And I looked over and I said, "You going to get 2011 on that when you get there?" He said, "You bet."
Yeah.
And I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Denmark." He's a retired postman.
Oh.
Letter carrier.
Yeah, walker.
And since he retired, every year he walks to Santiago from home.
From home?
From home.
Not from French border, from Denmark.
No, from Denmark. He closes the door, locks the front door in his house, and walks to Spain.
That's awesome.
And he says, I have a pension. My kids are grown. I don't have to worry about anything. He said, a man on the Camino,
it's free.
with a little bit of money and time, is a rich man.
Yeah. It's true.
He said, you run into pilgrims all the time. They got all the money in the world, but they don't have any time. They're in a hurry. They got to make the next place.
Yeah.
But no, he would saunter.
So did you meet any other pilgrims that had walked from other nations, like in Europe, had made long journeys?
The longest, there was that guy had the limit this time. Mm-hmm. For the longest distance traveled. Later on in that same walk, in a place called Tria Castella. You went through Tria Castella.
Yes. It has a castle in it, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a place it splits. You can go one route goes up through the hills. The other route goes to Samos, to the Benedictine monastery. You went to Samos.
Oh yeah, I went to Samos. Yeah.
Well, but right on the edge of town, there's a sign, and it shows the Camino pointing both ways.
Okay.
And you have to decide: are you going to go to the right, or are you going to go to the left?
We went to the Tria.
You went left.
No, I remember.
Yeah. Well,
okay, is that the way that goes to the castle?
If you go left, it takes you past the castle and to the monastery of Samos.
That's what I did.
If you go to the right, it goes up, and it's a little bit more direct to Saria.
Okay.
But it's all through the woods. There are no little towns. There are just one or two little hamlets up that way. And we got to that crossroads, and there was this tall blonde woman standing there, looking at the sign. And we said, "Well, which way are you going to go?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to go this way." I said, "We're going that way too." And so we turned off and went with us. Her name was Monica. She was from Lithuania. And she had been walking for 2 months. Mm. She had started in Le Puy, in France. And so the route that starts from there's a monastery in Le Puy, which was a big. It had monastic connections with the monastery at Roncesvalles and along with a couple of other places. Monica walked from Le Puy for a month before she got to the French border.
Wow.
So she was doing a double Camino in terms of length compared to what we were doing.
Yeah.
And she's the one that looked at me, and we got to talking as we were walking that day, and she was saying she had figured she wanted to see the Botafumeiro fly when she got to Santiago, and they weren't doing it every day. You couldn't be guaranteed on the day that you showed up that you were going to see the Botafumeiro fly. But she had figured it out. She had some inside information. Pilgrims talked to each other. And so she had worked out the stages between there and Santiago that would get her there on the right day. And she was telling me about it, and I said, well, I didn't come all this way to miss it either. So she kind of encouraged me to go along. And in fact, we did both end up in the same morning in the cathedral.
And saw it swinging.
And we saw it swinging. It was great. In fact, I saved her a seat while she went up and gave Jimmy a hug.
So, did you ever get there and not see the Botafumeiro?
I've not yet.
Yeah, we got there on the Feast of the Sacred Heart, which is historically a national patron day for Spain. So they fired up, and I saw this year on the Feast of St. James they put a GoPro on it. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they put a GoPro on the Botafumeiro so you could see it from that perspective.
And if you'll notice, the cathedral's empty too when they were doing it, so they must have done it. They must have done it late at night or something like that. But that wasn't the norm. That wasn't at the end of Mass like it usually is.
Okay, cool. What's been your experience with the religions of the people on the Camino? So, just most of my viewers are Catholic. Father Christopher here is an Anglican priest. He was a good buddy of mine when I was an Anglican priest before I became Catholic. There's probably not a ton of Anglicans on there. I met I met a Methodist. I met people who were atheistic. I met all kinds, but I was on a bicycle, so I didn't talk to people as much because I was going along. But you had more time to walk and meet people from all over the world, really, and
it's the whole gamut.
Everything.
Yeah. It's everything.
Yeah, I was surprised to learn that the majority of the people on it are not Catholic. That's what I was told. Less than 50% are Catholic. You think that's accurate?
I don't know how to I don't know how to gauge it.
Okay.
I noticed. I mean, I tended to stay as much as I could in parochial albergues. Refuges that are run by local parish churches. I'm certainly doing the pilgrimage for religious reasons.
Right.
And so I went to Mass every chance I got. Mm-hmm. I was in and out of every church I could go in and out of. Yeah. And there were goodly numbers of pilgrims doing the same thing. But there were also others that just looked like they were out for a party.
Yeah.
I mean,
out
for a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how to quantify it. I don't know how to. I don't know how to.
That was one thing that surprised me were the number of people who, I would say, oh, do you have a devotion to? That's what, Catholic talk is. Do you have a devotion for St. James? How much of that language just went over people? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, Santiago, the apostle. Oh yeah, I guess. Like, some of the people I met were like, this is just a spiritual pilgrimage. And they would even be Christian, but it seemed to me for a lot of them, they didn't get the St. James the Apostle part, which to me was surprising. I would have thought that if you made the effort to do this, it would be an integral part of, but maybe not. Maybe for some people it's not.
No, I think a lot of the modern popularity is just the challenge of it, the physical challenge. Mm-hmm. And the infrastructure that the albergue system gives makes it an experience unlike anything else.
Right.
I came across an article about the Camino written by a guy who was a big time through hiker. Mm-hmm. He had hiked the Appalachian Trail. He had hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. He had done all these big long distance minimalist in the United States. And he was running down the Camino as, what is this garbage? This is no challenge. This is stupid. You can you can sleep on a bed every night. You can do it. It's like, well, he missed the boat.
Yeah.
He was looking for something entirely different than what the Camino was there for.
Yeah.
I've heard somebody was going to run the whole thing in like a couple of days or a few days. Long distance marathon runner was
Right.
going to be the fastest pilgrim ever. You know, it's like, well, no, you're just kind of missing the boat here.
Yeah, yeah.
I met an Irish guy and his wife out in the middle of the Meseta. We ended up staying at the same little Casa Rural one night. We were eating dinner. He and his wife were sitting at the table next to me, and I was by myself then. That was a period in the Camino where I was just alone. I was doing this day in, day out by myself, and he got to talking to me. We got talking back and forth and asking what I did for a living and what he did for a living. And when I told him I was an Anglican priest, he was kind of taken aback by that, and I thought that was really cool. And then so the owner of the little Casa Rural came out, a Cuban guy named Leo, and my Irish friend then turns around and tells the owner of the Casa Rural that I was a priest, and he was like, "Oh, you're a priest? You're a priest?" I said, "I'm an Anglican priest." And he said, "Oh yeah." The next thing I know, he's bringing his pregnant wife out, and he wants me to bless the baby in her womb. Yeah. And the thing that was so cool about all this was the name of the Casa Rural was the Casa de Cura, the house of the priest.
Oh, yeah, curate, yeah.
Yeah, and so cool. He was all excited. Oh, I have a priest in my house, and he can bless my wife. Well, she's since had a baby boy, and it's a wonderful, healthy child, and all that was good. But the Irish guy had done the Camino the first time on bicycle, like you did.
Yeah.
And he did it by himself.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And he said it was the loneliest time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he kept going on about how, you know, he knew that there was something more, but that it really it was he felt like he was missing it.
Yeah.
And so
that's how
actually
I felt.
this time when I met him, he and his wife were finishing a section. They were going to walk as far as Lyon and then go back home because they only had like a 2-week holiday.
Right.
But they were doing the French route in stages.
Yeah. Yes. I met people who did the same thing. They'd come and they'd come back and were finishing.
Yeah. So a lot of people do that. They'll go for 2 weeks, walk as far as they can, and kind of like stick a flag in the floor, in the ground and say, okay, I'll come back next year and I'll start here and I'll go as far as I can get.
Yep.
And it may take them 4 or 5 years to get through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to do that. It's real easy for the Irish. I mean, they jump on Ryanair, and it's like riding a bus to get down to Spain.
Yep.
You know, and so that you run into lots and lots of folks from Ireland.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in Ireland stays home.
Yeah.
I think they all travel. I think they're all on the Camino too.
Right.
But they're great fun. They're great fun, and you know, and that leads into the whole kind of the connection between the folks in Galicia as being Celts.
Yeah, that's something that I had heard, but didn't realize it till I got there and heard bagpipes. I think it was maybe as early as like Astorga that I heard bagpipes. I'm like, what the? And like, yeah, these are Celtic
people. But they're different.
They are different.
Yeah,
they have one less, right? One less.
Yeah, not as many drones. I don't know what
many drones. And the couples that I saw actually looked like skin. They weren't like covered in plaid like you see in the, you know, like the ones we're used to, with plaid fabric over them. They looked like a giant belly or something. So that was pretty neat. You know, I really thought Galicia was gorgeous. Those tiny little farms with their little grain store. I forgot the Spanish.
Jorreos?
Yeah, and Jorreo, yeah. And there's so many elderly farmers, like as I passed through, you know, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s out there reaping with the old school reaper, you know? And I
got news for you. I think those people are older than that.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah. So they're out there, and all the young people have moved in, they say, into like Leon and Madrid, and there's just a lot of elderly people out in that part of the country, but it is just gorgeous. It's almost Lord of the Ring-ish as you begin to get into the hills, and it's just the green and the changes in weather. It would go from sunny to rainy, and it's amazing. Now, did you ever have a moment, because I did, I'm ashamed to say, where you're like, this is stupid, what am I doing here?
Sure.
I've spent you did 31 days. I mean, was there a point in there where you're like, what am I doing? I should have gone and done a different sabbatical.
I had blisters. I had pain in my in my knees to get up day after day and think, okay, I'm a week and a half into this. What in the hell was I thinking?
Yeah, a week and a half in.
Are you nuts? Yeah. More than once, and on every route, every time I've gone, there's at least one period at least of going through questioning, why am I doing this again? What in the world was I thinking?
Yeah.
And those are moments to dig down deep and keep pushing. And the thing about it is, you're caught up with the realization that, well, you got a plane ticket from Santiago. You ain't getting home unless you get to Santiago. And you ain't going to get to Santiago unless you walk to the next town. And so you at least got to get to the next town. And you've just got to dig into yourself and find the wherewithal physically to meet the challenge. And I mean, there's some of that when I was doing the month-long walk. It was calling home and checking in and crap going on.
Yeah.
Stuff taking place at home that you couldn't control. And realizing that you were a world away and there was no quick way to get there in case something happened. And, there's all of those sorts of things. And so trying to cope with all of that, the interior mental stuff along with all of that is all stuff that has to be dealt with as well.
Yeah.
I was taken over and over and over again. I ran into people who were working through things. Lots of people go on the Camino to figure something out, or to work through grief. Tremendous amount of grief on the Camino. I mean, people mourning dead spouses and lost children, and it's. I mean, the roots. The root has got all of that soaked up in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. People talk about, you're going to go walk. You're going to go get away from it all and go walk. It's different, but it's all there.
Yeah.
And you run into people dealing with all kinds of stuff, and it's amazing how fast you connect with people.
Yeah. There's a commonality.
The difference, well, just the whole exercise of, if you fall in with somebody in the morning, you're going to be walking together for hours, and so you talk about things.
Yeah.
And things come up, and it's astonishing how quickly friendships get formed. And by all reports, and I mean I can attest to it myself. I mean, tight, close friendships. Shared adversity brings some. It's kind of the foxhole friendship, kind of your buddy in the bomb crater next to you. But it really does pull you together in all sorts of wonderful ways. I mean, there's that dimension of the Camino that you can't get on a bicycle, you can't get it on a horse. You got to do it walking along.
Yeah.
And you never know who you're going to bump into. You don't know what the next story is going to be like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
As you're saying all this, it reminds me. Of course, the analog of pilgrimage is always our walk with Christ or towards Christ. And if I'm honest, are there moments, are there days, are there seasons where I say, why am I even a disciple of Jesus? This is so hard. It'd be so much easier if I lived like those people, or I didn't have to have these crosses or sacrifice. And the only reason I have them is because I'm a Christian. And to have those thoughts, it's very similar to the Camino. It's like, well, there's a plane ticket at the end of the Camino. Like, I got to get there,
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, that's life. I mean, on the Camino, I have doubts. Why am I doing this? As Christians, we have doubts. Why am I following Jesus? And that's life. That's a pilgrimage. That's a journey, And then also, like you were mentioning, people that you meet along the way. You and I don't get to control the people who come into our lives every day. and some people come into our lives through marriage or in-laws or at work or school or your roommate. You don't get to pick all of that, but they're in your life and you have to walk with them for a season. Hopefully you're a good influence and they end up coming to mass with you or joining the way to Jesus. But, like the whole pilgrimage is a story, a narrative, or an amplification of who we are as people of Christ, as disciples. So
absolutely.
And for me, like the end, when I had a flat tire right before we got to Santiago that day. And so I was going to be the last one in, and I was covered with oil, bicycle chain grease, and I was a wreck, and it was raining, and I was cold and wet. And so I remember coming over the crest and seeing Santiago the first time and seeing the spires. I got teared up. I was like, this is what it's going to feel like if I live to 89 and I'm like on the crest of coming over the mountain, and I didn't do 31 days, so I wasn't even like that prepared. I mean, what was it like for you the first time you saw the spires of the cathedral coming over?
I didn't get a good view of the spires.
Oh no!
Oh, we spent the last night on the Monte de Gozo.
What's that?
That's the last hill before you go into Santiago.
Okay.
And there's this huge albergue up there. There's 500 beds.
Oh wow!
They call it the city of vacations because there's this huge there's this massive parking lot and barracks.
Wow.
Where bus loads, I mean, they can bring in huge caravans of buses loaded with pilgrims, and they do apparently in the summertime. But the albergue part, the walking pilgrim part, has 500 beds.
Wow.
But it all feels kind of like Auschwitz. It's this battleship gray, austere, institutional, penitentiary kind of style. The doors into the little sleeping rooms even are sliding doors. They don't close. I mean, it feels like a cell block.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the last. That was the last night we stayed before we got in, and we had walked a really long day to get there. But like I said, my Lithuanian friend Monica had told me, well, the next day you got to be in the cathedral in the morning to see the Botafumeiro. So it's like, by golly, we did it. So at 5 in the afternoon, we staggered into this prison camp, and sure they had a bed, no problem. You could get a bed there because they had 500 of them. And so I didn't see the cathedral. And then and the next morning there was fog.
Oh wow.
And so we kind of wandered through the fog, following, from arrow to arrow to arrow.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I got into the tunnel next to the cathedral, going down into the plaza.
Okay.
That I knew that I was really sure that I got there.
Right.
I mean, at one point on a street on the way in, and I've got a photograph of it, you can see a spire sticking up. It's like, okay, it's there. It's not far. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. But I didn't really know I was there until I came down in front of it's on the north door of the cathedral. And the San Martin Peñario is across the way from it. And there's that tunnel. You go down some stairs through a tunnel and then down a couple more stairs out into the plaza in front of the cathedral. And there was a guy playing a bagpipe in that tunnel.
Yeah, I know the tunnel. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There was a guy when I was there doing it.
Well, there's always somebody doing it. It's usually a bagpipe. It's usually a piper. But it was when I hit that, when I came down in front of the cathedral, it just washed over me.
Yeah.
It was like suddenly, wow, I'm here. Every time I've been back to get there, to walk into the plaza, no matter which direction I've come in from, is an overwhelming experience emotionally. I was watching a TV show last night that was talking about the Camino. Andrew Zimmern's Bizarre Foods. He had gone to Santiago. I was crying.
Yeah.
It's the earthly embodiment of heaven.
Yeah, it is.
It's the end of life's journey. Yeah. It's the destination.
It's finis terrae, right? It's the end.
I've never had any kind of draw to go out to the coast.
Yeah, me neither. You think you'll ever do it?
I've gotten to the cathedral. Oh, probably somewhere along the line I might.
Yeah.
I'm hoping the next time I go, if I have time, I might ride the bus out there. Or it's 3 days. It's 3 days walk from the cathedral.
Right.
And you can actually do a loop and pick up 2 more Compostellas, two more little certificates. You can get one at you get one at Finisterre and one at Murcia.
Okay.
And so you can come home with 3 sheets of paper instead of just one.
Oh wow.
But to be at the cathedral is to have gotten there.
Yeah.
And I can remember so many. There was a time going over the Pyrenees at the end of the first day, walking down the trail, getting to Roncesvalles. I found myself singing hymns in my head. Up in the mountains, the mountains of Leon, between just past the Cruz de Ferro, there's where the Templar is at Manjarin. Did you meet Tomas?
The blind man? The blind man?
No, the Templar, the knight who lives up there.
Well, I went to a Templar shrine that had a Templar stamp, and the man who gave it was a blind man.
There's another guy there. His name is Tomas. Tomas is the guy who established that whole place. He claims to be he is a Templar. He's a member of the Templar Order, but that's his post.
Okay. Interesting.
And I remember walking out of there and going down the road just a little bit past Manjarin. The trail really gets rough, and you went down by the road, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But there's a really rough, incredible descent down a path that goes down to a little town called Acebo, and just hymns running through my head. I find myself singing, and it's all about going to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about getting to heaven. Yeah. It's all about life's journey. Oh, gives me goosebumps. Pimples just thinking about it.
All right, so let's close. Put your preaching tabs on. Look at the camera. Don't talk to me. Talk to people watching this who have never been on the Camino. Give them some reasons to do it, to just make it happen.
Well, I think we've already been covering that.
Yeah, but what would you say to the person that just needs a push? Like, I can just do all that at home.
Well, if somebody is curious about it, chances are they've already been hooked by it. Mm-hmm. I believe God calls people to the Camino. I think it's a vocational thing, and I've not met anybody yet, even at the end of the Camino, when they said, "I'll never do this again."
Yeah.
2 weeks later, they're saying, "I'm planning my next Camino. How am I doing this?" Mm-hmm. And it is for all that we've talked about before. There is no doubt that the Camino is metaphorically, but really, a connection with the journey of your life. You don't go through this sort of experience without coming to an appreciation of what it is that we are all about for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And to get a sense that this world and this life is what we're passing through is a profound realization to come to. And to discover along the way, I mean, we didn't even get into this discussion, to discover that God graces the whole way.
Yeah.
That what you need at every step along the way will come to you.
Yeah.
As long as you persevere, as long as you continue to the destination, as long as you remain a pilgrim, you're going to get there. Yeah. And God's going to give you what you need, over and over and over and over again. That was my experience. Everybody I've ever talked to who's done the Camino has said the same thing. There are thousands and thousands of stories that talk about discovering what it means to be graced.
Yeah.
The provision of God. I mean, I attributed it to the intercession of Santiago.
Yeah, St. James.
I think James watches over pilgrims.
Yeah.
I think he helps, and it's not just James. It's been his disciples. There have been guys after him, and Juan de Ortega's, and there's another story, San Domingo de Calzada. There are all kinds of saints who've discovered their life on the road, and it's all about it's about helping other people. Mm-hmm. It's about recognizing the common humanity of everybody, and we're all trying to get to the same place, and there's no competition about it. But it's cooperation, it's hospitality, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is,
and it's a blessing. I freely confess I'm addicted.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should go. Maybe we should go do the Portuguese route or something like that, and do a different take on it. Because I want to walk it. I walked it only one day because I wanted to get off the bike and experience it, and.
Now you walked up to Osabrero, right?
Yeah, that's the day I walked. I went to Osabrero, and it was awesome. I mean,
where did you start? You started in Osabrero?
No.
Down?
The day I walked, I finished there. The day I walked,
where did you start that day?
I don't know. Whatever. I think I went a little over 6 miles that day, so not very long. So whatever. 6 miles before.
Well, there's a little town up there called La Faba.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Before that, there's a place before that was Herreras, and Vega de Valcarce is down at the beginning of the big climb. But if you did the big climb up,
it was a big climb. It was a huff and a puff the whole way. I had to stop. I was breathing so hard. It was up.
That's my absolute favorite stretch of the entire.
Really. So I walked your favorite, or at least the end.
Between Vega de Valcarce and Osabrero.
Some of the vistas were just incredible. I would stop, and it'd be a little crest before it went up again, and I would just stop there and look, and I would see maybe someone half a mile below me, and I would think, well, do I want to slow down and talk to that person, or maybe I can catch someone up ahead? And there was shepherds bringing cow herders bringing their cows out along the Camino and then taking them into pasture and then taking the Camino back to where they kept them. It was just surreal. That was my favorite day, besides actually getting into Santiago, that was my favorite experience in the Camino, and that tells me I need to go walk it. I need to do that experience for 2 weeks, 31 days. I don't know. I still got a lot of young kids, so I don't know if I could do a 31 day, but
if you can get 2 weeks, you can do the Primativo.
Yeah, that might be a good one to do.
You can do that. I walked the Primativo. I think it was actually 11 walking days.
Yeah, because it's a little bit north.
It's hard. It's
Leon,
hard.
Right?
About straight north from Leon, from Oviedo. The cathedral in Oviedo has the sudarium.
Right.
The headcloth, the headcloth that was put over the shroud. And the old story is that the pilgrim who goes to Santiago and doesn't go to Oviedo spurns the master to call on the servant.
Oh, wow!
So it used. Yeah. So the custom came to be to take a detour at Leon. And there's a route that goes straight north from Leon up to Oviedo. It's called the Camino San Salvador. And you can walk that in about 4 or 5 days, I'm told.
I see. And
it's a hard climb through some incredibly rough mountains, but it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
And do they have albergues and
yeah,
support? Yeah,
okay. Yeah, but it's 3 or 4, maybe 5 nights.
Okay.
To get from Leon up to Oviedo. And then, so you could do the whole thing from Leon, go up to Oviedo, and then walk down to Santiago in probably 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The possibilities are endless. I mean, there are all kinds of permutations. I'm waiting right now. I'm praying that I'm going to get a sabbatical grant. I've applied for this pretty substantial grant. If it comes through at the end of this month, next May, I'll be walking from Seville.
Oh, the Plata. Isn't that the Camino de Plata?
The Via de la Plata is the silver route from Sevilla.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 kilometers, 600 miles.
That's big. How long was
600 miles.
How long was it from France? How many kilometers?
There's a sign from Roncesvalles that says 790 by road.
So the Plata is longer.
The Plata is longer. It's the longest traditional route in Spain.
Okay.
All within the borders of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a long, lonely road.
There's probably it's not going to be as populated as the northern route.
And in fact, this time of the year, I mean, it kind of stops in late July, early August because it's just too damn hot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Southern Spain just bakes.
Yeah, like here.
So if my grant comes through, my plan is to start walking the first week in May, and I'll walk all the way through May into the first part of June.
Wow.
And come up from the south. And then from there, I plan on going by train to Rome.
Yeah, nice. Well, I was on the end of that Leon to Santiago in June, and the weather was great. I mean, of course, we were up north, but it was cool. You know, I was wearing a light raincoat. It was raining. It was, but it was never sweaty hot.
Oh no! No!
Especially in Galicia, it's just so wonderful.
Well, all the other times I've walked in the fall.
Okay.
I've gone September and October. Mm-hmm. And I like that time of year because all the fruit is ripe.
Ah.
So you can eat your way from one end to the other. Right. well, the blackberries on the French route, on the Camino Frances, it's lined in blackberry bushes.
Is that right?
And in September, early October, they're all getting ripe.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just walk down the trail just eating away.
Yeah.
We started calling blackberries the gift of the apostle.
Yeah.
Santiago's regalo,
mm-hmm.
the gift. Because every time you had to climb a big steep hill, at the bottom of the hill there'd be a big blackberry bush. And you just sit there and stoke up on the, get your little sugar jolt going, and all right, I'm going to climb this damn thing, and up you go.
Yep. Awesome.
No, you gotta walk it.
Yeah,
you
I
definitely gotta walk it.
Definitely.
You got a taste.
Well, I got the taste. Well,
bless you. I could go on for days.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do it again. And I'll pray that you get the grant, because I want to hear about the route from Sevilla, and I mean that's pretty intense. I really like the idea of doing it through Portugal. I think if I walk it next, I'm either going to do a short Frances, like I did before, but walk it, or I want to come up through Portugal. That way I can go to Fatima and stuff too.
I was going to say that you could incorporate Fatima into it.
Yeah.
If you do a long walk on the Frances, you can start from the other start point and really begin in Lourdes.
Which would be great. Mm-hmm. That added quite a bit though, wouldn't it?
Might add a week to it. Yeah.
Just a week.
But you could go to Lourdes first, and then you go through. It goes through a town called Jaca.
Yeah.
Somport and Jaca. I've seen the maps, but it's south of Saint Jean Pied de Port.
Yeah.
It misses Pamplona, and it connects up just
I think
west
I just
of
saw in
Pamplona
the news this week the SSPX, the Traditionalist Order. I think they just bought that church, that ground at Saint-Jacques right there. They just purchased it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
cool.
It's kind of they want to revitalize that entry point as part of the Camino tradition. So that might get more people interested in thinking about the way you're talking about right now. So it'd be cool.
Well, as I said, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
When I did the Primativo, there was the first day in Oviedo when I got ready to leave. I met a guy in a cafe, a little short Guy came walking in just as I was finishing my breakfast, getting ready to start on the first day. And he obviously was a pilgrim, had a backpack, and had all the kit. Looked like he was going. And I greeted him, and then I asked him if he was heading for Santiago, and he said, "Oh yeah." And he said, "Well, sit down." So I had a cup of coffee with him, and then we decided to walk out together. He's Polish. He was 72 years old.
Wow.
And he and I walked together the first day, spent the night at the same albergue, and the next morning we started walking. I stopped to take a photograph of a church, and he kept walking. And I thought, well, I'll catch up to him in a little bit, and then I never saw him again. It's like, where did this guy disappear to? And because he was like a hobbit. I mean, he was literally a little over 5 feet tall, little short guy. But they're fast on the downhills because they're lower to the ground.
Yeah.
Well, I ran into him again in Santiago.
You're like, where'd you go, man?
At the end of he just kept walking. He walked all the way out to Finisterre and back in the time it took me to get to Santiago.
Oh, wow.
And he may have caught a bus on the way back or something. I don't know what. But I ran into him there, and this was in 2013. 2015, I was back in Santiago on the very same day, on Spain Day, on Our Lady of Pilar, October 12th. And I'm coming around the front part of the cathedral, and I look up, and around the corner comes this little guy, this little Polish guy, Tadeusz. He's a Christopher Cantrell. Unbelievable. Every single year in the fall, he takes off from home and goes and walks a Camino.
72 years old.
And he's like 75 now.
Yeah. Cool.
And I guarantee you, if you're in Santiago on October the 12th, the Feast of Our Lady of Pilar, Tadeusz will be there.
You'll see him there. It's a vocation, right?
Yeah, but it'll keep you alive too.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good medicine too. Well, Father Christopher, you've always been you've been a great friend, and and a big part of my inspiration to do this was hearing you talk about it, and being addicted to it, and always celebrating the Camino and doing it over and over. And I've met some other people as well, but you're definitely the cheerleader in my life for the Camino. I'm glad I got to experience a little bit, and I definitely want to go back.
It's a blessing, and it's different every time you go. I mean, you don't wear it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much. Buen Camino.
Bless you.
All
Buen
right.
Camino usted.
All right. God bless.
Adios.